Hey everyone, how's it going? And in today's video, I want to show you the deployment process to AWS and specifically Elastic Beanstalk of our backend application. In the first video, we covered the AWS Amplify and we deployed our front end. Now it's the turn for the backend to be submitted. Let me quickly iterate what Elastic Beanstalk is. Elastic Beanstalk is an Amazon service, or rather, I would call it solution that incorporates multiple services together. Here's an article from AWS themselves, and you can really give it a quick look. It's a short one. It's just giving you all the rundowns about what the Elastic Beanstalk is. And just to quickly point out, so as I said, it is a solution that incorporates multiple services in it for your convenience, so you don't have to do it manually. But if you want, you can certainly do things manually, and whatever services Elastic Beanstalk creates on your behalf for your convenience, you can certainly do it manually, and you can go and as a part of those services is an EC2 instance. So Elastic Beanstalk creates an EC2 instance for you, but you can also do it yourself. You can go to EC2 and then launch the instance without all the other services that Elastic Beanstalk is providing for you, such as load balancer, auto scaling group, and a cloud watch log and stuff like that. So if you don't need all of those services, then certainly you can just play it simple. And if you know what you're doing, you can just create an EC2 instance without all those services. But the purpose of this video is to have like a complete solution and ease of use, right? So when you create Elastic Beanstalk, all those services are configured and set up for you, so you don't have to mess around with those, except like few minor configuration, which we're going to cover later in this video. All right, so let's take a look at new application. This is our front end. Nothing has changed as far as the setup. It's still Next.js app. The only difference is that when we are mounting component, we're getting the list of to-dos. This is the function to get those. I'm just using simple fetch. I could have used Redux in RTK query or React use query, but for simplicity purpose, I kept it this way. Then we're getting to-dos back, and we setting those to-dos to our list of use state, and then we are displaying those to-dos down here, right? So same thing as before, just a slight modification because now we have, let me demonstrate the app. Now we have this created at, since we're now working with the database, it's a MongoDB Atlas. We are having those created at, updated at, and that's what I decided to add just to make this app look a little bit better and less boring than it used to be before. So, right, then when we submit our to-do, we are just making a post request to our backend, and we are sending our input value as a task to our backend. Then after this response is successful, we return newly created to-do back to the front end as part of our response, and then we adding that new to-do to the list of to-dos and basically just setting the new array over here. Why are we doing it this way? Well, again, since we have now created that updated at, which is created on the server, we cannot grab this value from the front end. We need to wait for the response from the back end with all those values. And that's pretty much it. Let me actually quickly demonstrate what it looks like. So if we add another, let's do eat food, it's just being added instantly like that. And then if we go to our MongoDB, we only have 3 items, but if I refresh this, we're going to see that 4th item that we just added at the end of the list here. Eat food, created at, updated at, and this is what we see over here, right? I'm just making this a little bit prettier over here. So if we delete this item from the database directly, gonna drop it. Now we're back to those 3 items that we had initially, and I refresh it. This is what we see. Okay, that's our front end functionality. Again, all the code. Our backend is a simple Node.js app. Again, nothing too sophisticated. if you worked with Node.js in the past, if you've built a couple of apps, then this will look very familiar to you. So we're setting up the app, express JSON, then I'm giving it a port 5050. Keep in mind that this process env.port is essential and it will be used by AWS, and the port has to be the port and not port like, I don't know, like if we leave it without adding this health check, then our health check simply won't work unless we put like, if we make app.use and or app.get probably in this case, and then /route, and then we respond with 200. And it's important to have the 200 because this is what it's looking for. So in this case, if we leave this there, then we don't need health check. Then we have our to do. This API v1 is like the way I got used to building apps. You can remove this. You don't really need it. You don't even need API. You can just simply do like /to do. But this is the way I do it. Then we have connection to the database, which is in this config file. If you look at it, again, just one line, connecting to MongoDB using Mongoose. Then we're listening for the database connection to be open, and once the connection is open, we're listening. We're basically spinning up the backend server and start listening on the port. In case of any database connection errors, we are just console logging this. Then let me show real quick what we have in models. Models is just one thing. It's our to-do. This is the timestamp that responsible for created at updated at, and this is the task that we have, the type of string and required true. That's pretty much it. So controllers, we have add to do, get to do. So with the add to do, we are taking this task from the front end that we're sending, and we're creating our to do from the model that I just showed you. Then we're saving that to the database and responding back with success true, and data is our to do that we created. And this is what I referred earlier to when I talked about like to do is being returned to the front end. All right, and then get to do, again, simple thing. We're just creating the database for our to-dos and responding with to-dos. Then we have route, and the route is a simple, again, thing. We just have post and get. Post for adding and get for getting those items. I didn't add any prefixes since I have only like two things, one post, one get, so I don't really need it. I just wanted to have everything as simple as possible. Anyway, this is the backend application, and let's take a look at the Elastic Beanstalk. Let's actually start our application. All right, and for Elastic Beanstalk, we will need the Elastic Beanstalk itself, EC2, Code Pipeline, Certificate Manager, and Route 53. So if you don't have these bookmarks, you can add them by just typing the name of the service that you need and then clicking the star. It will appear at the end of the list, and then you can rearrange it by just dragging and dropping like that. So why do we need Certificate Manager and Route 53? Well, by default, Elastic Beanstalk is not does not have SSL certificate, so your connection is going to be HTTP. Unlike AWS Amplify, which conveniently providing you with SSL certificate for your front-end application. It's a different story with Elastic Beanstalk, and therefore we are going to need a domain, even though this is not necessary for this tutorial. If you don't need SSL connection, then just simply use HTTP for your pet project. But if you're building the production application, most likely you will need the SSL. So SSL will be provided by Certificate Manager for free. You don't have to purchase it, but you do need to purchase a domain. I purchased this best to do app, EBS elasticbeanstalk.site. Again, you don't need SSL for this, it cost me only like $1. You just need a domain itself that you will attach to Certificate Manager. And why Route 53? Well, this is also optional. I like to keep my DNS records and management in Route 53 because it integrates well with Certificate Manager. And you will see later that when we need to add a CNAME from Certificate Manager into our DNS, it's just a one button click, whereas otherwise you would have to copy those CNAMEs, go to your domain provider, and add those CNAMEs manually, which is also not a big deal, but since we have this service, why not using it? All right, so how do we create Elastic Beanstalk application? So if you never had Elastic Beanstalk application before, then when you click on this bookmark here, you will be brought to this page, and this is where you click Create Application. If you had some Elastic Beanstalk environments before, then when you click this, you're going to be brought to environment page. I had these dummy ones from the past. Don't pay attention to these. You're just going to end up on this page in general. And if you are on this page, there's two ways of creating it, right? So you need to create application and environment. If you do it from here, there are two steps: creating the application by simply giving it a name, hit create, and then once that is created, then you create an environment for it, right? You can click here, create an environment, and then you connect two together. Another way, if you click over here, you can still navigate to that page that I showed you earlier, this one. And when you click Create Application from this page, those two steps are going to be combined together. I don't know why it's that way, why they couldn't just combine and have only one button for creating applications, but whatever. It is what it is. So here, if you click on that button from that landing page, this is the step number one, right? That we had to create an application, where we have to create an application. And let's give it a name. We're going to call it Backend EBS. And then environment variable pre-populated for you by just adding this prefix here. Then we can select a domain, subdomain name. Let's do Backend EBS app. Check availability. It is available. So now we can use it. It's not necessary. If you leave it blank, then it's just going to auto pre-populate this, and it's going to be gibberish like that. So if you're okay with this, just leave it blank. It's not necessary. Manage platforms, we're going to select Node.js. These are the other options if you're interested. Here, we're going to keep everything as default. Sample application, we're going to have a custom configuration as our preset. Now for the service role, since I had already Elastic Beanstalk environments in the past, I have this role already created. And that's why this is selected as a default option for me. If you never had Elastic Beanstalk before, then this will be probably selected by default, and that role is going to be pre-populated for you. So you just hit next. In my case, since I already have that role created, I'm going to click this use existing. Next. So here you would establish a VPC peering. Unfortunately for MongoDB, if you want VPC peering, you would need to purchase an at least M10 cluster, which is a paid version. I'm not going to do that. Otherwise, you would have to list your EC2 instance IP address in this network access in order for that server to be able to access the database. So with the VPC peering, it would have been a lot easier. Then no matter how many instances we have, they all would have had access to our database without listing this network access IP address. So we would list a VPC as in our network access, and then all of the instances from that VPC would have had access to MongoDB. Again, we're not doing this. We're just skipping that step. Database, we have our own tags. No, thank you. So hit next. If you don't know what you need, then just keep it as default. You can always figure out later and change this later, even though you can start small, and then as your load increases, you can add, or change certain things. But for now, we're going to keep it as default. If you know your numbers beforehand. If you need like 100 gigabyte disk space, then this is where you would do this, right? For us, it's a default one. So then these are staying as default. Auto scaling group. So this is where things get interesting, right? So if we select a load balancer, again, selecting single instance I wouldn't recommend, because even though it's an option, uh, this is an option not to create a load balancer with Elastic Beanstalk, because load balancer will cost you money if you're not in the free tier. But if you're in the free tier, then it's going to be covered. But single instance will not create a load balancer for you. However, it comes at a consequence of difficulty attaching an SSL certificate to a single instance, because when you select a load balancer, it is easy to attach an SSL because you can scroll down here in the settings, this listener, you add listener, you list the SSL port, which is 443, select HTTPS, and then you attach the certificate. Since I don't have anything in my certificate manager, that's why I'm not having any options here. We will also be able to access those settings. And by the way, all the settings that you see here and from the previous steps, they're all accessible from within the app after it is created. So this is kind of like um, a rundown for you before you even create the application, right? So don't worry, you will be able to access all of these settings when the app is created as well. So when we create an app, we will be able to attach an SSL certificate, not only from a certificate manager, because here it's only giving you the option to attach it from certificate manager. Later, you will see that you also can attach it manually by adding those values of your SSL certificate, and you will understand what I'm talking about when we get there. So for auto scaling, let's go back. So when we select a load balancer, I think I explained this single instance enough, so let's move on to the load balancer. Load balancer, as the name suggests, it balancing the load on your application. So when you have lots of traffic, lots of users, let's say during the big time, like during the lunchtime or whatever, during the Christmas, you have lots of traffic and you need to scale your, let's say you have only one server and that server is no longer able to handle that big of a load, then auto scaling is detecting it and adding a new server and another new server and another up until you reach this max number here. Um, we're going to keep it as 1 and 1 because I don't want this to be actually working and scaling, even though what we are going to do this to do app is very minimalistic. It's never going to trigger even if we go above 1 over here. So then if you select something but 1, you would need to understand the next couple of settings. So for instances type, keep in mind that there are certain instances that are available for a free tier, and you can find the list of those. I'll leave the link to this website in the description, and you will be able, if you click compute, this is like basically a free tier rundown from AWS. You can check what's free and what's not, and what's covered and what's not. So here, if you select compute, then EC2 instance, you see here, you get 750 hours of runtime. And for Linux and these platforms, you have T2 micro and T3 micro available as a free tier eligible instances. Therefore, when we go back, you want to have T3 micro or T2 micro. It doesn't matter for me because I'm out of the free tier anyway. So nothing is going to be free for me in this case. But for you, keep in mind that you want to have, unless you want to pay or unless you need some specific instance because you know what you need, then obviously it's going to cost you money. So we'll leave these settings as default. Again, we are talking from the pet project standpoint or just a small application standpoint. Obviously, if you are deploying a very large application, I hope you already kind of know what all the settings are. And keep in mind that in order to understand all of these settings, it's not just a simple YouTube video. You would probably have to complete cloud practitioner certification for AWS or even solution architect in order to understand all of the settings and what in each and every one means. I'm just trying my best to give you this information in very short time, and obviously we're not covering all of it. So this is default, and then for the scaling triggers, basically, again, as the name suggests, this is the trigger for your scaling. And the metric, you select whichever you prefer: CPU utilization, network out, network in, so amount of traffic going in or amount of traffic going out, or CPU load on your server. So when you have, let's select CPU utilization because it's the most easiest to understand, I guess. Then you leave statistic as average, I guess, unless you want like minimum, maximum of your CPU utilization. And then units you select. Obviously, if we're talking about CPU utilization, we want probably percent. Um, and the period evaluation is 5 minutes. So basically every 5 minutes is going to check whether you need another instance or not. This is the bridge duration. Don't worry about this one. This could stay as default. And then the threshold, since we selected percents, we don't need like 6 million or whatever that number is. We probably need like something like 75%. So what this means is when your threshold CPU utilization uh, is at 75 or above percent, again, this is the unit we selected, right? 75%, this auto scaling will trigger and another instance is going to be added, and the amount of instances are added at one time is determined here, scale up increment. So we have always one server, right? If we have the scale up increment set at 1, then when we meet this 75% CPU utilization threshold, another one instance is added, and we're going to have 2 in total. If you increment it to 2, obviously you're going to add 2 instances at once. So we always have 1, then another 2 are going to be added when this threshold is met. Same goes for scale down increment, or probably decrement in this case. How many instances you want to shut down at once. So every 5 minutes is going to check whether the instance need to be either incremented or decremented, and then the amount of scale up is what's going to determine how many of them is going to be either incremented or decremented. All right, I think that's everything for this. Application load balancer is what we need, dedicated. And then for the listeners, I already told over here, you would add your SSL certificate if you have it right away in your certificate manager. If not, don't worry, we're going to add it later. And for the processes, remember I mentioned this health check. So this is where you would select this port, this entry here, the default one, and click Action Edit. Click on the health check, and then you see this path is your root domain. So that's where you would grab this health check and add it here. So the name of this path could be anything as long as this is matching what you have on your backend, right? And from then on, this is going to check your health of your application using this path name. I'm not going to do this now just because I want to show you how you can access this property when the app is already created, because it's a little bit hidden. Not really, but I mean, if you're not familiar with Elastic Beanstalk or just AWS in general, it could be overwhelming sometimes. So I want to show you how you can do it after the app is created, so you know from 2 places in case you forgot to add this over here. You would know two ways of doing this. And that's pretty much it for this section. Let's move on to the next one. Here we would say health reporting, we want basic. And since we select basic, we need to deselect this manage platform updates. Again, what all these means would probably require you additional knowledge. And as I said, if you want to complete some courses on YouTube or Udemy, there are Cloud Practitioner, Solution Architect for AWS, and those courses will give you a much more thorough understanding of all of these services and settings and etc. Email, we're just leaving for notifications. We don't need it. In case you do, then you provide your email. Rolling updates, we just leaving everything as default here. Again, if you want to understand rolling updates and what are the different policies and available and stuff, and how they affect your application when you're updating it. In order to avoid some interruptions in your service, you would need to complete like a different course in order to have an understanding of these. The only thing is left is the environment properties, environment variables. We're using Nginx. So this is where you would add your environment variable. For your backend, we select this Mongo URI, we add it here, and obviously the rest of it goes in the value. If you need another one, you would just click there and add another one. Again, I'm not going to, and then you click next. I'm not going to keep this here because I want to show you how you can also access environment variables, how you can find them when the app is already created, because I want you to know both ways of adding these. One way is adding it directly here. Another way is adding it from the application once it's already created. Keep in mind that if you add these variables right now, you wouldn't need to restart Elastic Beanstalk because they will take effect right away. Once we're going to add it later, we will need to restart Elastic Beanstalk in order for them to take effect. So I'm going to remove mine. You can add yours right away and hit next. So the last step is really just a review. If you spot some error, some mistake in one step or the other, then you just hit edit. And obviously, you're just going to edit this particular step, and all the others are going to remain the same. So you don't have to complete like all of them if you go to edit one. All right, that's pretty much it. Let's hit submit. It says that it's going to take a few minutes, but realistically, it's gonna take 5 or 10 minutes, and then this blue message will turn into green, saying that your Elastic Beanstalk environment launched or something like that. I'll get back to you when this is done launching the environment. All right, and my environment has finished provisioning. I accidentally hit the F5 and updated the page, so you can see this green success message here, but we see this health check, which is also green. Before we proceed with a code pipeline and deploying actually our application to our Elastic Beanstalk, let's quickly cover those settings that I've mentioned and where you can find them. So for the environment variables, well, in the first place, let's look at this domain. Remember, this is the name that we have selected for our subdomain, backend, EBS app, and then the rest of it. Again, if we wouldn't pick this, it would have been some gibberish, which you would never understand. It's still not the prettiest link here, but at least somewhat readable. And if you click on this link, this will take you to the website. As you can see, it's not secure. That's what I meant in the beginning, talking about domain and SSL certificate. This is just the boilerplate from the Elastic Beanstalk application. And soon this will be replaced with our backend here. So your backend will be available at this address. Okay, so that's that. And let's go to configuration. You can open your environment in the left-hand panel here and just go to configuration. And in order for you to access the environment variables, you will need to select this updates and monitors and go all the way down. And you can see this is pretty familiar to what we had during our configuration process. It's the same thing, basically. You just click and add your environment variables. Let's do that right away. So I'm going to add my Mongo URI. So then by the time we finish the rest of it, our Elastic Beanstalk is updated and ready to go. So we don't have to then wait for it. So we add our variables here and click apply. So now it's going to apply those, and it seems like everything is ready to go, but unfortunately it's not. And if you would run the application now, Well, actually, it is already automatically updating it. I was going to say that we would have to update it manually. But since we applied those new configurations, it's by default updating your environment, and you can see the logs or events over here. Um, all right, so that's perfect. Let it finish its job. Let's move on to EC2 instance. And remember that health check that I mentioned. In order to access that health check, you need to click on EC2, scroll down to target groups, load balancing target groups. Then you select the group. And over here, you go to health check and click edit. So this is where you would access this path, and you would need to copy what you have on your backend right now. Let's hit save, and keep in mind that's for HTTP, right? Okay, so that's how you access that. And for the SSL certificate, you would need to go to the same location, but load balancers. Then you would select your load balancer, and here you would add a listener, and you would select HTTPS. It will automatically pre-select the port for you, and then you can add either forward to target groups. Sorry, that's different. Yeah, we want to forward to target group and then select the target group that we have, that we just modified the health check for. And then for the security policy, I would leave everything as default. Excuse me. And here you would select where you want the certificate to come from. ACM stands for certificate management. And from IAM, it's for identity management. And then you can also import the certificate, right? And here you would provide your PAM values from your SSL certificate if you have it in the file somewhere. This is what you can do. And remember, I told you that this modification, this setting has more flexibility than the one that we had before. We would still want to go to ACM and then select the certificate here, but since we haven't created it, we'll do it later. Let's deploy our app first. So now our Elastic Beanstalk environment is updated, and I think I showed everything. Oh, actually, one thing I want to mention, if we go to EC2 instance, I want to quickly point out a few things here. We can click on the instance itself, and this is our server. It's a T3 micro. And if we scroll to the right, this is our public IPv4 address, and this what we would need to insert to our MongoDB. Right, let's do it right away. So we go to MongoDB and click on the network access, then add IP address. You list your IP address there and give it a name. So this is going to provision and whitelist this IP address for our MongoDB, and then we will be able to connect to our application. Hopefully, it's not going to give us any error once we deploy with code pipeline. It shouldn't, since we added the environment variables and this public IP. It should go smooth, but you never know. Anyway, one thing I want to also point out here is if you want your instance to be protected from termination, so you accidentally terminate it, or you delete your application from Elastic Beanstalk and you still want to keep the instance for whatever reason, then this is where you would access that setting. You go to instance setting and click change termination protection. If you hit enable, save, then this instance virtually impossible to terminate. If you go to actions and instance, hold on, instance state, not instance action, and you try to terminate this instance from here, it will give you an error saying that this instance cannot be terminated. So this is a good thing. If you're deleting your environment, it will kind of keep your instance. Maybe you have like configuration in this instance, or maybe you want to attach this instance to somewhere else and or something else, then you will also keep this instance there. Another good thing is when you have an auto scaling and you want your main instance always be there. So let's say auto scaling is going to add another one or two or three or 10 instances, but you always want to keep this particular one no matter what, because when it's going to scale down, it's going to delete. There's also some policies which you can change how the auto scaling is deleting the applications, or not applications, sorry, the environments, instances. Um, but you can also protect a particular instance and from scale. It called scale in protection. So if we go in this left-hand menu to auto-scaling groups, we select this auto-scaling group, click on instance management, and then we select this instance or other instances that we have that we want to protect from scaling. And then we click actions and set scale in protection. Once you click that, it's successful. So now what it means that this instance, you see this protection scale in, um, this instance will never be deleted by your auto scaling. So that way you can prevent accidental deletions, because when I was learning AWS, I configured one instance, I put a lot of time into it, and I didn't know that the scaling protection needs to be there, and my instance was just simply deleted by auto scaling, which I was at the time unaware of. So now you know something that took me a very hard lesson to understand this concept. Now you by watching this video you are aware of this problem. And if you want to preserve your instance from auto scaling um, accidental deletion, then you just set that in there. All right, with that said, I think I have shown you everything that I wanted to, and let's move on to actually deploying our application. We're going to head over to code pipeline. We're then going to create the pipeline. Let's give it a name, backend um, backend EBS app. So then this is going to create us a new service role. For this one, we do need to create a new service role. Um, Variables, we don't need them. Advanced settings as default. Next, we're going to select the provider. You will select whichever one you are using. Since I'm using GitHub, I'm going to select this GitHub version 2. And for you as well, if you're using GitHub, then select version 2. So now, remember, same as with AWS Amplify, um, since I already have this app in my GitHub account, let's actually go and delete that app from my GitHub. So we will replicate the same scenario that you will face. So let's go to settings, applications. So the one is for Amplify that we added in the first video, and the second one is for this code pipeline. Let me grab the password for my GitHub. I believe it's this one. Okay, and now we are going to uninstall this app. So that way we only have one in here. So let's close this GitHub and let's go over here and click connect to GitHub. So then we are going to be presented with this window. Let's give this connection a name. I don't know, EBS app, maybe. Connect to GitHub. Now another thing, um, we're going to install a new app. We're gonna do only select repositories. We're gonna select, I'm going to select the one for the backend, install, and that's pretty much it. It may ask you for your GitHub password, but since I have just entered mine, that's probably why it didn't ask me for that. Let's actually hit continue and see whether, or connect rather, not continue. No, it didn't ask me for password. If it asks you for the password, then you just simply enter the password. And that's it. This is the connection to GitHub. So now we're going to select the repository name, which is our AWS hosting backend, which we selected. Push in a branch. So this is the pipeline trigger. Every time we push into the branch, and then we provide the branch name, which is going to be main, and code pipeline default. All right, let's hit next. Build provider. We don't need build. We're just going to skip the build stage. Yes, skip. Deploy provider. We're going to select AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So here you would have to select the proper region. Since we are in my region is North Virginia, then it's automatically just selecting the one that you're in. Make sure that you have the right one if you're not seeing your application name here. So we have backend EBS, environment name. So basically this is the application name inside of your Elastic Beanstalk, and this is the environment name inside of your Beanstalk. Then hit next. This is just a summary, and let's create a pipeline. So now, theoretically, what's going to happen? So the code pipeline is going to grab our code from the GitHub, and then it will deploy it to our Elastic Beanstalk, or essentially the EC2 instance. And we just have to wait for the process to finish, and then we will be able to see our application live. All right, and my application has finished deploying. So if you have error during this stage, so you need to probably make sure that your application is running locally, especially if you're using some frameworks and stuff. Otherwise, it should have no problem deploying. But if you do have an error, there will be a message which you can click on, an error message, and you will then see the log why your application has failed the deploy stage. Anyway, in order to test this app, let's head over to Elastic Beanstalk. Here we would have to click on our environments, right? You select environments, and you click the one that we have active. Then remember this domain, we had a boilerplate. Now, if we click this link again, we will see this cannot get. And why is that? Well, because we are on the root domain. Since I have no handlers of GET request for the root, that's what we get. But if we try to reach this health check, let me actually enter that there. We see this OK message, and this is what we are sending back, right? Perfect. So that means our app is working. The only problem we have at this moment is this not secure, but your application is 100% deployed and ready to be used. So basically, if you have any routes in there, let's try to get actually those to-dos from the database in here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do API, v1, and to-do. And there you go. We see the list of those to-dos from our application, which are coming from our MongoDB. And since we already added the IP address for our EC2 instance, it had no problem connecting to our Mongo. Okay, so now what we need to do is basically to deploy our front-end application, which is modified again, and try this application live when both of them running on AWS services. One is on Elastic Beanstalk, the other one is on Amplify, and also connecting the certificate manager, which we are probably going to do next. All right, so in order to obtain the SSL certificate, we need to go to certificate manager and request a certificate. Well, actually, hold on, no, because first of all, I want to probably switch DNS to our Route 53. And in order to do that, let's grab this link here. And we need to go to Route 53, click on hosted zones either here or over here. And then we click create hosted zone. So we enter our website address, and if you want, you can give it a description. Public hosted zone. Let's get create hosted zone. So, and by doing so, we have created some DNS records for our hosted zone, which we will now need to add to our domain provider. Basically, switch away from this Namecheap, and in Namecheap, you just click on your domain list, you select the domain, you click manage, and then you'll be on this page. And over here, you would click domain if it's not selected, and select custom DNS from this dropdown. So now we would enter those DNS, all four of them, including the dot at the end. All right, let's hit save now. Oh, all right, DNS update may take 48 hours to take effect, which is in like 99.9% cases is not true. Usually it takes anywhere between like 2 minutes to 30 minutes. Most is probably 1 hour. Um, Sometimes it's pretty fast, but you can also check this by going to mxtoolbox.com. If you enter your domain name in here and you do mx lookup, it will give you the result back. And right now, it should list those name servers that we have entered, and looks like we don't have it yet, obviously, because we just changed them. But what you are going to see, or what you need to see from that DNS lookup, is one of these name servers. As soon as at least one of them propagated, then we are good to go. All right, it has taken about 40 minutes to an hour to update this DNS record. Now, if we click on MX lookup, you will see the name of those DNS values that we have entered in our Namecheap custom DNS. So, okay, now let's go back to certificate manager. Now we can actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's go back to our hosted zone. And what we are going to do, we're also going to open the EC2. So I'm going to click on it and open it in a new tab. We're going to go down here to load balancer. We're going to select this load balancer, and we're going to copy this DNS name for the load balancer. So what I'm trying to do here is to redirect or create a subdomain for this best to do app website or whatever, best to do app ebs.site. And I'm going to add a create record. It's going to be the backend dot best to do app ebs.site. It's going to be a CNAME, and here we're going to enter the value that we just copied from this load balancer over here. So what is this going to do? Well, basically, when we going to visit our best to do app EBS site and backend dot best to do EBS site, right now it's not reachable. It's basically nothing because this thing doesn't exist. But as soon as we enter this record into our DNS management system, it's going to take probably like a couple of minutes. If it's not instantaneous, then a couple of minutes. And what this is going to tell that when you reach this address, backend best to do ebs app.site, we're going to redirect to this route basically, and that is our load balancer address for our application. Let's leave it there for now. Let's give it some time. And meantime, we're going to go to certificate manager, and we are going to request a certificate. It's going to be a public certificate, fully qualified domain name. It's this one, backend bestapp.site. It's going to be a DNS validation. everything else is default. Hit request. So you need to hit update. Now this certificate is pending. If you click on it and go into its settings, you'll see that over here, ideally, we would have to copy this CNAME and CValue and enter them inside of this DNS management in Namecheap. But since we have moved our DNS to Route 53, now everything is controlled by Route 53 and things like that. When you need to enter certain CNAME, A name, or whatever name, this is going to go to Route 53. So you can basically forget about your Namecheap at this point. All right, and that's what I meant earlier about having it in Route 53 and nice integration. Um, if you hit this button, create record in Route 53, this CNAME and CValue are going to be added for you. So we just need to hit create. All right, so now that is created in our Route 53. If I open it in a new tab and we go to our hosted zone, we can see it right there. It's added over here for us, just like that. So if we go back to certificates, look at that, it's already issued. So sometimes it's taking a couple of minutes, sometimes it's just almost instantaneous. So now that is ready to go. So we have our certificate and it's issued in our certificate manager. So after creating the certificate, we need to go to our EC2, head to a load balancer, click on the load balancer, and over here we're going to add listener. So our listener is going to be HTTPS forward target group. We just select the target group that we have. And then we head down to our certificates, and our certificate should be here, and indeed it is. So we can now select it. Let's leave everything as recommended here. Let's hit add. Now you can see that it's not reachable. It says 443 that we have created, listener port unreachable. And the reason why is because we need to modify our security rule. So if we go back to load balancer and then security, then we select security group. Over here, we need to edit inbound rules, and we need to add one for HTTPS and allow connection from anywhere. Now hit save, and that error should be gone. Let's take a look at our load balancer again. And indeed, it is fixed. The error is gone. Now everything is reachable, and default SSL certificate is assigned to this backend best to do app website. And as you can see, the certificate details are over here. All right, for you, it's been a split second, but fast forward 10 minutes, the website is updated now and we can reach it on HTTPS. I haven't really done anything. I just realized that we need to wait it out because adding those DNS records sometimes can, take a little bit longer. But now, if we reach our website at backend best to do app ebs.site, even if we remove that HTTPS, we should end up on the secure connection, and you will see this lock over there that represents the secure connection, and we see the same result on the root domain. But if we go to anywhere else, for instance, to API/v1/to-do, now we are able to get our backend result on this route. And all we need to do is just to connect this endpoint here, backend dot best to do app ebs.site, to our front end application, deploy our front end real quick to AWS Amplify, and then see for ourselves how this whole thing is going to come into clutch from AWS Amplify to Elastic Beanstalk backend. Want to point out one thing, I guess. So right now we only have the backend deployed, right? So if you go to this website without the backend subdomain, we don't have a website over there, right? So it's just nothing. But as soon as we deploy our Amplify, we're going to be able to connect this domain to our Amplify, and that is what I'm going to show you. How can you connect your domain to the Amplify? And so we're going to come in a full circle, like deploying a backend and the front end. I guess for those of you who are still interested watching me deploying this to Amplify, I'll record this. But if you already familiar with the first video, then again, nothing new from that standpoint, because it's the same application except a few minor changes. So now we have env local for local host. This is what you need, and then .env. This is going to specify our env for AWS. And basically what we're going to do here is we're going to grab this backend stuff and we're going to replace it over here, because before we were using that ugly link from Elastic Beanstalk. Now we're replacing it with our own domain and with a backend, because this is what we use to make a request over here, right? On line 37 in main file, we grabbing this next public base URL, which would be now our backend.best2do-app-ebs.site. All right, and that's pretty much it. Now we can deploy this application. All right, so then what we're gonna do is basically go here, host new app, GitHub. Oh, before that, we need to go and create a new branch, and that's going to be with backend. And I'm going to deploy the changes so you can see the file. It's like that, and then the env as well. And we're going to say backend changes. Let's commit and git push origin with backend. So now we have submitted our branch, and if we go to GitHub, our AWS hosting, we can see that we have this backend branch created. And if we look into the list of branches, this is from the first video where we haven't built any backend. This is for this second video where we do have a backend, in case you're interested deploying both applications. This is where you can grab them from, right? Okay, so I'm going to select GitHub. Our account is already connected, so therefore we should not have any connection problems or issues. There we go. Connection is authorized. We're going to select AWS hosting, and the branch is going to be with backend this time. Now we are just skipping the build phase in case you need to modify it for whatever reason. You have some unique build case, then you would edit it here. We're going to create a new role. It's picking up the framework, Next.js, save and deploy. And now, within a couple of minutes, we should see our application up and running. And I guess I'll catch you when it's finished provisioning and deploying this app. All right, it's been a couple of minutes and the moment of truth. So once I click this link, we should see our application running on this address. Let's take a look. All right, as I expected it, it's not picking up by default. And if we refresh that, we're getting 404. Backend. Let me just double check the URL, that the URL is fine. And oh, that's what the problem is. It is able to pick up the env, but I completely forgot to specify API/v1 over here. On this with backend branch, we have to push this env file to that branch, and let's say env mods. Let's commit. And this is the way I'm going to do this. Git push origin with backend. And let's see, that's going to trigger the change on our Amplify as well. And there we go. It's starting to provisioning new file. And once it's deployed, we will be able to access those to-dos. Okay. So not necessarily you need to specify those environment variables there as long as you have this env file going into production. Again, env.local, it's a Next.js thing. So an env.local is going to be your file for development environment. All right, the application deployed second time. Now we can go to that URL again, and this time we should be able to see our to-dos. And there we go. So now we're fetching those to-dos from this address here on the internet. Basically, at this point, you can see that our app is working and we're making requests. Let me just refresh this. So we can make another request, 200 to do, and you can see where we're fetching those requests from. And it is https backend.best-to-do-app-ebs.site. So meaning that we're fetching it from the backend that we deployed to AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So now the only one thing that's left, and the only one thing I want to show you is adding the domain to this front-end application. So we have something that we purchased and not this gibberish address over here. So for that, you would go to domain management. And again, you will now see the benefit of having your DNS management in Route 53, because when we going to add domain, we will be able to select the domain that we have in our hosted zone from Route 53. We can just simply select it from the dropdown here, and we can do a configure domain here. Then you define the subdomains for this and whether or not you want this to be redirected to 3W. Anyway, for this, I'm not going to bother. If you do need this, if you don't need this, you can decide for yourself, but I'm just going to keep it as default because it won't matter. Now, what's going to happen now if you don't have your domain set up in Route 53, then over here, when you go to, I believe, manage, no, not manage. I guess we would have to wait for that message there where it would say you have to configure. There we go. So in order to verify your domain, if it's not in Route 53, it's, let's say, it's in Namecheap still, you would have to copy this name, whatever you saw there. Right now, it's disappeared already. You would have to copy that CNAME and add it to your DNS configuration. But since we're having this in Route 53, that is done for us automatically. We have absolutely zero worries about like adding those entries in there. So now SSL is configured and we're waiting domain activation. Again, since this is DNS, it's completely unpredictable. Could take like 2 minutes, could take 2 hours. But usually, I don't know, it's anywhere between 5 to 30, 40 minutes roughly. It's very rare when it goes beyond like 1 hour. So I'm just going to wait until the domain activation is complete, and then let's take a look first. Maybe it's already done. If not, then we'll wait. Let me remove that. And so going to this website now should present us with the to-do application. And there we go. It worked. So it only took like a couple of seconds, even though domain activation is still in progress. Let me refresh this to see whether or not that's true. Yeah, it is. But still, the app is already available for us at this best to do app ebs.site. Okay, and let's, for a good measure, add something. Eat food, for example. Let's open up the network tab just to kind of make sure that I'm not, fooling you, and we are actually interacting with our backend from Elastic Beanstalk. So eat food, as you can see, is added. It's the timestamp. And the request header is backend best to do app ebs.site API v1 and to do. So meaning that we are interacting with our backend on Elastic Beanstalk. And if we look inside of MongoDB, if we go to database, browse collections, well, obviously you will be able to see those entries in there. So there's eat food. And if I delete eat food from MongoDB and go back to the app, refresh it, we see that now we have only 3 items. And this is what we used to get those to-dos from, again, from our backend. All right. This video, I don't even know how long it is because I was filming this in a couple of sessions, so probably it's going to be anywhere between like 30 to 50 minutes, but rather long. However, lots of information I wanted to share with you and hope you learn a thing or two, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.